Hello, and welcome to yet another show takeover. I am Nis Vincent Peterson, the creator and host of the Scandinavian Perspective, and with me yet again today is Richard Green. There's a very special reason for that, as we teased on our last show. Richard and I are going to make a show together, and it is going to be this show, as we only have X amount of hours in our lives. And as the Scandinavian Perspective was my show, and we want to be 50-50 partners with no big I's and little U's, we are going to do a complete rebranding and rethinking of the show. That includes a name change. So this will be the last or second to last time that the show will be promoted as the Scandinavian Perspective. We would like your help in creating a new name for our show. So we will later today be showing you 4 ideas we have for names, and on top of that put out a poll on Twitter that you can participate in, giving us your input and ideas. And as always, you can send comments to the links of the video or to my email address, nis@progressivearmy.com. That is NIS@progressivearmy.com. Before we move on to Richard introducing himself, let me just talk a little about some of the ideas we've had. I'm sure Richard will also pick up on them. We are gonna try and do news in the start of the show as a base for the rest of the show. Meaning, for example, today we are going to talk about Fight for 15 and Democracy Spring and the Verizon strike, which will also lead us into talking about the Panama Papers. So we have an overall subject and topic for the show. An idea for the show that I'm very excited about is that we're going to try and feature community and grassroots political art and political movements, giving them a platform, but also relying on them to help us create journalism, to help us paint a picture of what is going on in the United States. Not trying to dictate a picture like corporate media does. And the last idea we have is for a segment we unfortunately won't be unveiling today, which we will try and do devil's advocacy, where one of us will take a position on a subject and the other one will argue against it. And the way it will work is that this subject will be chosen early in the week, and the subject alone is what is going to be picked. And then this subject is not in any way going to be shared with the other person other than for him to be able to research. So the topic will be shared, but where the other person is going with it won't. And then we will do a I am going pro, I'm going con discussion on it live, simply as an exercise to show that to showcase other sides of the same coin, but also to show how to disagree on something and have an argument without declaring war. And without further ado, I want to introduce my co-host and co-founder of whatever this show is going to be named, Richard Green.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Nis, for that and explaining what we're doing moving forward. And I just want to also thank Benjamin for giving us this platform to help introduce everyone to what we're going to be doing and with whatever the show title ends up being. And I'm really excited both for today and for what's coming up, and so I'm looking forward to that. On that note, most of the people here are probably regular viewers, but if this for some reason is your first time here, make sure you're subscribing to the channel so that you can know next time that Ben or us or the other folks on the channel are going live. Also, so I guess one of the things I wanted to do, I realized I hadn't done before really, was introduce myself to the Progressive Army crowd, and I just wanted to give a quick little rundown of how I came to Bernie and so on and so forth. So Uh, essentially, I'm a Bernie supporter. I initially got attracted to Bernie or his run for presidency when before he was actually announcing that he was running, but when he was just floating the idea. I had already seen some memes or vague things that were related to why he was going to be running or why he was considering running and what he was trying to bring to the race as far as a more progressive candidate and show people that the generic Democrat isn't their only option, essentially. And I had seen that he'd done some things in Vermont, but it was across the country in a place that I hadn't been and didn't plan on going. So I only moderately paid attention to when he was doing things on like national security or other national bills, and realizing that he seemed to be the only person that had the sensible position. And so beyond that, I guess a little bit about myself. I'm not especially formally educated. Just I do have a degree, but not anything especially pertinent to what we discuss here, like politics. But mostly self-educated. Got very interested in national politics at a young age when I started to see how national politics could affect me at the local level, mostly through education. When I would press and ask questions about how come our school didn't have this that I saw at this other school, or this, that, and the other thing, I started to find out that there was much more depth to what was going on at the local level, and how that what was going on at the federal level was precipitating much things. It actually happened in band when finding out about funding of instruments for rental or for use for kids to be in the band. And so that's when I figured out that some schools have very different processes for attaining those things than the school I attended. And so from there, I was attracted to politics, and that leads me to Bernie and this election. And what I'm doing here is essentially I found that we need more voices out there. And so I felt like I needed to get my perspective out there, because I knew that a lot of people weren't hearing what I was thinking, but they were thinking it themselves. And I know how it feels to be on that island sometimes, and so I thought I could bring that here. And so hopefully everybody's been very welcoming so far, and the audience has been great. We've had some great interaction. I'm really happy to be with you all. And so I guess going into what this was mentioning about the show moving forward and some of the ideas that we're having, one thing that we may do is for that devil advocate piece, maybe we'll float to the audience what they would like to see argued, and we'll see if we can make that work. That's another thing, just because I really want to make interaction a significant part, and I know NIST does also, of what we're doing going forward. And so we want to be talking about the things that you're interested in hearing more about, and so that'll be a critical component.
Yeah, definitely. The engagement part is what we're trying to really do different. Wanting to give a voice and participation to the audience. Now, callers calling into radio shows is nothing new, and people sending tweets that are then picked up and vetted by producers and then aired a week later on a show is also nothing new. But having it happen real time, having it happen live with responses to it, having people who are an integral part of making this show actively part of talking to the viewers as they're viewing and discussing and debating it, brings news and news commentary into the living room of the people who use the news, who watches and the news. It makes it participatory. So that is, for me, the big difference, that we have to promote to media everywhere that has to happen. If it doesn't happen, if it's just the TV talking to us, then we are just going to lean back into our sofas once again and let insanity ensue.
No, that's really important, and that also reminded me of something that you mentioned and that I wanted to pick up on about one of the other things besides the community art that we're going to be doing is we really want to highlight community reporting. So independent journalists and citizen journalists and people just doing what they can to help get information out so that we can be aware of the things that aren't being covered in some of the other venues that we're more accustomed to getting our news from. So some of the things we're going to be doing is highlighting articles written by the Progressive Army and looking at other independent media sources like the Burn Report and many others to try and find not even just your traditional larger, like your Young Turks or even Hartman, who's growing of whatever size, but also just independent people like you that are watching the show that happen to be at the front lines of any particular story. We really want to bring those to light, or if you're doing investigative journalism or whatever it is, we really want to highlight that stuff. So we want, if there's things that you guys are seeing that you want brought to your attention, or you guys are creating that content, that's one of the things that we're really going to want to be interacting with you with, as far as getting that and making that a part of what we're putting back out into the community. And did you have anything else you wanted to add on where we're going on the show at the moment?
Not other than look us up on social media. You can find me on Scandinavian Perspective on Facebook, or Scandi Perspective on Twitter, where we also engage in debate and discussion. Where can they find you, Richard?
You can find me at Progressive Green, no E at the end of Progressive, and just Green. And there I do a lot of tweeting. I try to capture as much of the people as I can. That's one of the things that I try to bring a highlight towards, is so I'm much more inclined to retweet or to rebroadcast or talk about things that show real people on the ground doing things. And I guess in that light, what came to the headlines today, what's been going around, and I'm sure various people have seen in a variety of ways, is there's been the Fight for 15.